Welcome to This Explainer. We talk a lot these days about the digital age, or the AI revolution, right? But today, we're actually going to look backward so we can look forward. We're going to step into the shoes of a historian to analyze how a single, hissing, heavy iron giant basically engineered the entire modern global economy.
Think about life before our modern conveniences, before electricity lit up our houses, before cars were everywhere, and before airplanes made the world feel small. There was one machine that started it all. Steam was the ultimate catalyst for human progress. It is kind of the invisible ancestor of literally almost every piece of technology we rely on today.
So to really unpack this, here is our roadmap for the explainer. We'll start with 1, the power bottleneck. Then 2, Watt's efficiency breakthrough. We'll hit 3, the mass production boom. And 4, global trade and travel. After that, we'll impartially weigh 5, the human cost. And finally look at 6, the engine evolves.
All right, let's kick things off with part 1, the power bottleneck.
To appreciate the fix, you have to understand the problem. For thousands of years, humanity was effectively trapped by a massive power bottleneck. If you wanted to move something heavy or run a mill, you relied entirely on muscle, animals, the wind, or flowing water. Work was agonizingly slow. I mean, if the wind didn't blow or if there was a drought, the economy literally just stopped. But steam offered something totally unprecedented. Relentless, continuous, heavy power that you could just turn on, anywhere, at any time. And the physics behind breaking this bottleneck? They are brilliantly simple. First, you take intense heat energy and apply it to water. That water turns into vapor, expands, and creates an insane amount of pressure. Then you harness that trapped pressure to shove heavy pistons and create mechanical motion. Heat to pressure to motion. It's an elegant little chain reaction that turned raw thermal energy into pure, unyielding industrial muscle.
Now, here's a wild fact for you. Almost 2,000 years ago, the Greek engineer Hero of Alexandria actually made a spinning steam-powered sphere. But no one saw the potential. It was basically a parlor trick. Fast forward to the 1700s and we hit a desperate economic crisis. English coal mines were digging deeper, and they were constantly flooding with deadly water. They desperately needed a pump, or the whole industry was going to drown. So in 1712, a guy named Thomas Newcomen built the first practical steam engine to pump that water out. It worked, but it had a massive, fatal flaw. It burned through an unbelievable amount of coal, making it way too expensive to use anywhere outside of a coal mine.
Which brings us nicely to part 2, Watt's efficiency breakthrough.
Enter Scottish engineer James Watt in the late 1700s. Watt looked at Newcomen's engine and realized it was wasting. Well, actually, wasting is an understatement. It was bleeding energy. So he invented a real game changer called the separate condenser. By cooling the steam in a totally separate chamber from the main piston, he essentially slashed the energy waste. It saved massive amounts of coal, drastically dropping the cost to run the thing. Watt didn't just tweak this machine. He turned it from a clumsy mining pump into a cheap, highly reliable powerhouse.
And that specific efficiency unlocked our 3rd chapter, the mass production boom.
Because these new engines ran on coal instead of flowing water, factories were finally untethered from rivers. You could build a colossal factory wherever you wanted. This triggered an explosive boom in mass production. Suddenly, textile and iron production were soaring. Mining operations expanded massively just to feed coal to these hungry machines. And because production was now centralized, sleepy little towns rapidly exploded into these dense, bustling cities. We were watching human civilization pivot from farming right into a rapidly urbanizing, mass-producing machine.
But hey, the revolution didn't stay locked inside the factory walls. Let's look at part 4, global trade and travel.
All that relentless mechanical motion eventually found its way onto wheels and hulls. George Stephenson created the steam locomotive, famously called the rocket, and suddenly cities were connected overland by iron rails. Heavy freight and passengers were moving faster and cheaper than anyone had ever dreamed. And out on the water, steamships completely replaced old wind-dependent sailing vessels. They stuck to strict schedules regardless of the weather. Because of this, global commerce, mass immigration, and exploration just skyrocketed. The oceans entered the industrial age and the world shrank.
So we've seen the incredible velocity of all this progress. But as historians, we have to pause here. We have to look at this dramatic societal pivot and ask a tough question. Who is actually shouldering the burden of this massive economic explosion? That brings us to a really sobering but crucial part of the analysis.
Part 5. The human cost.
We have to impartially weigh both sides of the ledger here. On the macro level, the triumphs are staggering, right? Unprecedented global trade, insane factory output, interconnected cities. But zoom in on the micro level, onto the factory floor itself, and it is a very grim reality. The cities grew way faster than basic infrastructure or government regulation could handle. Inside those smoky, deafening factories, workers and tragically even very young children endured brutally long hours for shockingly low wages. They were working in fundamentally unsafe conditions, breathing in severe pollution every single day. So yes, the machine age brought undeniable progress, but it was heavily subsidized by intense human suffering.
This natural tension leads us to our final historical chapter. Part 6. The engine evolves. Despite being the absolute king of industry for over a century, heavy steam power eventually had to yield. By the late 1800s and early 1900s, we wanted to go faster. We wanted cars, we wanted airplanes. The traditional steam engine was just way too bulky and heavy for that. So, lighter, more efficient technology stepped up to the plate. Gasoline engines powered automobiles, diesel engines took over heavy transport, and super compact electric motors started popping up everywhere. And slowly, the great smoking steam engine faded from public everyday life.
But, and this is a really crucial takeaway from this whole explainer, the legacy of steam never actually vanished. It just went behind the scenes. Even today, the vast majority of our modern power plants use highly advanced steam turbines to generate electricity. Seriously, the power that's lighting up the screen you are watching right now, it is the direct technological descendant of James Watt's hissing iron giant. The steam engine was humanity's very first true machine revolution. It literally rewired civilization. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to analyze. As we stand today on the brink of new massive technological revolutions like artificial intelligence and the whole shift to green energy, can we achieve that same incredible velocity of progress without repeating the devastating human cost of the factory floor? It's a question history absolutely begs us to answer. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the world around you.